Hello and welcome to the 2015 Game of the Year podcast for Better Late Than Never video games. I guess that's the right website to use for this. It's not necessarily my personal blog. It's not TSSZ news related. So I guess technically this goes up on bltn.net. I'm your host, Ryan Bloom, sometimes known, well, I guess more often than not known on the internet as Blaze Hedgehog, a name I chose when I was 15 and never bothered to change. And I feel like I've said that last sentence 1,000 times, because I feel like I have to quantify why I'm called Blaze Hedgehog. I was going to be joined by my cousin Matt. He asked to be a part of this podcast, but frankly, our schedules haven't really mixed very well. He's asked me to play games with him the last couple days because it's Christmas break and everything, and I've usually been busy with other things. And when I'm recording this right now, it is actually dark outside. Everyone else is asleep. I'm the only one up. And there's a lot of circumstances as to why that is, but we won't get into that right now. That's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about video games and which ones were important to me this year, and I guess technically last year too. I was supposed to do a Game of the Year video last year for 2014. I recorded all this footage, I wrote this big old script, and then I didn't do anything with it, and that's because, 2015 has been kind of a crazy year for me. What was it? It started, I always tend to go a little bit long-winded on these kind of stories, but bear with me. I guess it all started in 2015, or 2012, I'm sorry, it's late, or it's early, or it's both. But it started in 2012 where it felt kind of like this horrible new beginning in a way, where I lost a lot of things in 2012, and 2013 was in some ways a chance to start fresh. And apparently starting fresh meant that every year I seemed to get a little bit busier. 2013 was, I spent 10 months putting together 3 video reviews, and just those video reviews. I wasn't doing anything else, and that was exhausting. And then last year, I was busy. I think it was more videos last year. Here, let me check my script, because I have the thing written out here. I guess 2014 wasn't so bad, but then 2015 this year was just this has been a long year for me, let's say. I got a part-time job working at a thrift store. I traveled out to Nevada for almost 2 weeks for my brother's wedding. Heads up, Nevada kind of sucks. I feel bad for saying that, because I have so much family out in Nevada. I have cousins and aunts, and my brother, and now his new wife, which is my sister-in-law now. I have my niece out there, because my brother had a kid years ago. But my impression of Nevada is sagebrush, dirt, and it being way, way too hot. We're talking 115 degrees. It gets hot here in Colorado, but it doesn't get that hot. And it was kind of miserable. I also went to my cousin's wedding here in Colorado, I think. I don't know if that was 2015. That might have been 2014. But yeah, no, it was this year. So yeah, 2 weddings. One that I traveled for 2 weeks I traveled out there in a day, and it was out there for almost 2 weeks, whatever. And then I had to house sit for another cousin for almost 2 weeks total. It was 2 separate times. It was a weekend one time and a week and a half the other time. I had my first bout of jury duty, which was probably one of the most stressful things I've ever done in my life. It was a rape case, this masseuse. It was rough. It was not something I want to do anytime soon ever again. I went back to school and I got my GED. And then, like, I always lump this in there, but I got this really nasty cold at one point, too. Like, I'm the kind of person who never gets sick. Like, never, ever, ever, ever. I get sick, like, once every 8 years. And this year, I got hit hard. I was knocked out for almost 3 weeks. And it was right in the middle of me going back to school and having jury duty. And it was rotten. That is like, it's just this bad dream in my mind. This awful, awful cold. Like, it probably isn't even fair to call it a cold. It's probably like the flu, you know? It's like, ugh. Thankfully, I didn't barf, though. I mean, I have something to, like, still count on. I haven't barfed since, like, high school. That's, like, a weird thing to care about, I know, but it's just, yeah. What was I talking about again? I feel like there was a greater thread in my mind and it's gone now. Besides the fact that, hey, 2015 was a busy year for me. So busy that I didn't really have time to play very many games. But we'll get to that in a minute. Because since I technically wrote out all this script for the 2014 Game of the Year, I figure it might as well go over it a little bit, because I did all this work, and it would be a shame to throw it away. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll probably end up throwing some video footage up of the games that I'm talking about, because, like I said, I captured footage for almost every game in this 2014 Game of the Year script that I wrote, and I've had that on my hard drive ever since then, so it's been sitting here for, like, some of it over a year, actually, and I've just never done anything with it. So let's reread over my 2014 script. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to skim through it, and we'll talk about that. So the script just basically starts with me complaining about all the video reviews I did in 2014. Oh, I guess it was 2014, yeah. It wasn't 2013 that I did, like, the Tropical Freeze video review, and Mario Kart 8, and Sonic Boom. Oh, Sonic Boom. Oh. See, with 2015 being so busy, this all feels like a century ago that Sonic Boom came out. Wow, I wrote like 30 reviews last year. That is crazy. Well, I guess I wrote my Bayonetta 2 review to this year. What? That didn't come out of my mouth right, but whatever. But even though I did all this video review stuff, I completed a lot of games last year. It was in 2014, I finished, like, Castlevania 1, 2, 3, Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, and Dawn of Sorrow. A bunch of NES games, Yonoid, Super Mario Bros. 3, Resident Evil 4 was last year that I beat. Wow. That was a good game. I like that. Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, Shovel Knight. I played Gone Home last year. That was a good game. I beat Freedom Planet last year, Crazy Taxi, etc. But yeah, wow. I played a lot of games last year compared to the very few I've played this year. So let's go down the categories here. I have a category here for Coolest Idea, which I gave to Retro Game Challenge 2. The original Retro Game Challenge was this kind of collection of fake NES games based around this Japanese, like, comedy. It's not really like a variety show. It's just it's this Japanese man in a jumpsuit, Chief Arino, or Arino, I guess is how you're supposed to say it. And he jokes over playing video games, and they're usually like these really old retro games like Super Mario Brothers 3 and SOS for the Super Nintendo, Lemmings, Mighty Bomb Jack, things like that. And one of the like prevailing themes in this show, which I was going to call it Retro Game Challenge, but it's actually called Game Center CX. But one of the primary themes of Game Center CX is kind of like, you get the feeling that Arino is bad at games on purpose, because each episode kind of has this arc where it's so funny that he's bad at the game, right? Like in Super Mario Brothers 3, he got a game over like in the first world, and that's kind of impossible to do unless you're really bad at video games. But he always has this moment of like redemption where he rises up and he learns the game and he beats it. And that's the whole point of the episode, is that he gets issued a challenge to beat a specific retro game, and he has to learn how to play it, and he usually, at least according to the way the episode is structured, he supposedly is playing these games for like 10-15 hours straight with like few breaks in between. And Retro Game Challenge, the actual Nintendo DS game, is kind of like, it tries to, what is the word I'm looking for here? It tries to imbue that same sort of feeling of learning a game and being a kid again, right? So the whole premise of this DS game is that you are transported back in time to the 1980s, and Arino himself gives you challenges. And the challenges are like, play this space shooter called Star Prince. I think it's Star Prince. Or it's like Space Prince or something. I haven't played the original Retro Game Challenge in like 6 years, but whatever. He issues this challenge where he will say, get a certain score within a certain time limit, or get to a certain level, or beat a specific enemy, or take a specific warp. And the first DS game was pretty good. I liked it. But it felt a little lacking. Like it was all these fake NES games, but it was from an era of NES games that I didn't really like too much. They were trying too hard to be like old arcade games, and that can be kind of hit or miss sometimes, depending on how into that you are. So they were really simple and really easy, and that's a little lame, but Retro Game Challenge 2 changes all that. Instead of being these kind of simple arcade-like games, it goes for more notable games. Like there's a Tetris clone in there, there's a Super Mario Brothers clone in there, and there are these really good fake retro games that are actually legitimately fun to play on their own. And I think, and there's like so many more of them in Retro Game Challenge 2. The first Retro Game Challenge game had like 5 games at most, and Retro Game Challenge 2 has the original 5 games plus like 7 or 8 more. And that's kind of incredible. And one of the things that I really like about the Retro Game Challenge series is how it's not just games and it's not just challenges for games. It's kind of this atmosphere of nostalgia. It has fake game magazines. You can chat up a friend while you play these games and get tips and like, what he thinks of the phony gaming news of the time. Retro Game Challenge 2 introduces a way to talk to your friend's mom and see what she thinks about video games. You can go to the game store and play demo kiosks of games that you don't have yet at home. It really nails a certain feeling of being like 11 years old and playing the NES and the Genesis and the Super Nintendo in a way that nothing else really does. And I kind of love that a lot. To the point where you have games coming out on the Virtual Console, you have all these retro game collections coming out, like Mega Man Legacy Collection, for example, just came out in 2015, and I wish they would take a page from Retro Game Challenge, because it is such an amazing feeling of a game about transporting you back in time to replicate that era of gaming so precisely that more of these retro game collections need to do that, because that is an incredible feeling. Most other retro game collections are just a menu, right? Or a menu and some concept art. Like, even Rare Replay, for as cool as that is, it doesn't replicate the feeling of originally playing those games in the era they were released. And for that, I think something like Retro Game Challenge 2 deserves to be commended and, copied, I guess? We need more games, more collections structured like Retro Game Challenge 2, and that's why I gave it the coolest idea of 2014. Okay, next up is Best Racing Game. At some point I became really obsessed with racing games, and last year I got a Nintendo 64 game called Beetle Adventure Racing. I've known about Beetle Adventure Racing for a long time. I've emulated it a lot on Project 64 and everything, but it doesn't really emulate that well. So last year I bit the bullet and I spent $7 and got an actual cartridge for Beetle Adventure Racing, and it is really good. They don't make racing games like this anymore, and I feel like I say that a lot, and that's probably because I primarily focus on racing games like this, where they don't make them like this anymore. All the racing games we have now today take themselves so seriously, with Need for Speed and Gran Turismo and Forza and Drive Club. And if you're not a Forza or a Drive Club or a Gran Turismo, then it's the complete opposite side of that, right? It's your Mario Karts, it's your Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, it's Little Big Planet Karting, it's Disney Infinity 3.0. But what we really don't have much of anymore are games like Beetle Adventure Racing, where it's this kind of almost action movie aesthetic. It's an exaggerated version of reality, where you're kind of driving through maps that look pseudo-realistic, but there's dragons and there's UFOs and there's haunted graveyards and Dracula's castle and the Skull Cave from the Goonies and pirate ships and dinosaurs, and it is just so fun. There's not very many tracks in the game. There's I think there's maybe 7, maybe 5, but they are so big. Some of the later tracks will take up to 4 minutes for a single lap, and that's kind of incredible to me. And that it stays fresh and interesting, because one of the things that Beetle Adventure Racing does is it has just shortcuts everywhere, and each shortcut is this unique path through the track that you don't really, where you see things that you don't see in the other routes through the track. In what is it? Is it Coventry Cove? I think that's the jungle level. No, Inferno Isle is the jungle level. And you start that track driving through a jungle, right? And at one point, the track splits off, and you can either go left or you go right. If you go to the left, you kind of drive into this area that looks like Jurassic Park. There's electrified fences everywhere, there's a giant T-Rex that comes down and tries to chomp at your car. But if you go to the right, then you go through this indigenous tribe village filled with monkeys and torches and huts and this lake. And then eventually the two paths will converge back and you'll go through this village. And then once again, you're hit with another choice. You can choose to stay on the docks or you can drive up along the coast. And even then, if you choose to drive up along the coast, it splits off again. And there's this big ramp you can go through that leads into a cave system. And it's just, there are so many choices about where you want to go and how you get there. It is so fun to just explore these tracks. And we don't get racing games like that anymore. We kind of did with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the one that Criterion made. But the shortcuts in that aren't really fun. They're good for like cutting corners and taking tracks faster, but the tracks themselves aren't fun to look at, right? They're just generic like forests and cities and highways, and Beetle Adventure Racing manages to make tracks fun to look at. And that's, again, like, I know I just said this with Retro Game Challenge 2, but we need more games like this. That just straight up. It's so dated feeling, but it is still so fun because it is so charming and interesting and varied. Well, like, not varied in a way that's not like you have a lot of cars, because obviously all you drive in this game is Beetles, Volkswagen Beetles. Whatever the new kind was, not because I know they just came out with like a 2013 edition of the Beetle, but back then, back in 1998 or whatever, when they came out with the new Bug, it's that kind of car. And you get different like classes and colors and paint jobs and all this stuff, but it's still Beetles. But anyway, it's one of my favorite racing games of all time. And for that, it gets Best Racing Game. I mean, obviously. I mean, come on, right? For 2014's Best Retro Revival, obviously, it was Shovel Knight. I mean, what else last year would get an award like that? Of course it was Shovel Knight. And I even wrote here, it feels like I'm cheating a little by giving Shovel Knight the Best Retro Revival Award, because it's not technically a retro game. I mean, it kind of is. But in 2013, I gave it to DuckTales Remastered, which was actually a retro game. But here it's a fake retro game, which is, I guess, a theme. But Shovel Knight's really good, you guys. If you haven't played Shovel Knight, you should probably play Shovel Knight. In 2015, the Plague Knight DLC just came out. And Plague Knight is completely free. You don't have to pay for him. And it completely changes the way that game plays. And even just originally, Shovel Knight is so good. It's got this Castlevania, DuckTales sort of vibe going on to it. The level design is just immaculate. The music by Jake Kaufman he is so good at chiptunes. Like, just everyone should just quit because he is the king of chiptunes, I guess. And like I write here, if Shovel Knight had actually come out in the 1980s, like the contemporaries it emulates, I guarantee it would have been a cornerstone of my childhood. That's how good it is. It would have been up there with Castlevania, and Mega Man, and Super Mario Brothers, and just whatever else, you know? The game is immensely polished, and has a surprising amount of, like, heart in its storyline. Like, there's this storyline about how Shovel Knight lost the love of his life. And you wouldn't expect that kind of story in that kind of game, but it is there, and it works really well, or at least I thought it did, rather. For our next 2014 category, we have Pirate Doom, with a runner-up given to Alchemilla. Is that how you actually say it? Alchemilla? It's the hospital from Silent Hill. It's a Half-Life 2 mod. Really well done, Half-Life 2 mod, Alchemilla. It's kind of simple. The developer admits he didn't really have the knowledge to like implement an inventory system or combat or anything. So it's just kind of like one of those so-called walking simulators, but in Silent Hill. There are some puzzles, and you do pick up items, but there's no formal inventory. Like, you don't hit a button and an inventory screen comes up. You just kind of have to keep track of everything you have in your head. Or I think the developer suggested opening up Pastebin and writing down every item you pick up, which is kind of like a lazy way to do it, but if he didn't know how to do it, you get the kind of impression that the guy making Alchemilla was more of an artist than a game developer, and that's kind of cool because the art direction in that mod is really good. But we are not here to talk about Alchemilla. We're here to talk about the best mod of 2014, which was Pirate Doom. When you're dealing with mods for a game that are old as Doom, things are kind of weird because they get kind of insular, and you have lots of unbalanced junk by people who have been playing Doom for like 25 years. So it's hard to find a mod that is really balanced towards, I guess, normal people like me who don't really obsess over Doom too much. But Pirate Doom kind of really nails the difficulty curve that I think non-obsessed Doom fans would probably be looking for. It's still kind of difficult. It's just on the edge of maybe being a little too difficult. But it kind of hits that sweet spot where it's just hard enough, but not frustrating. And it's got this like just beautiful visual aesthetic where it borrows all these graphics from like Monkey Island and Outlaws and just all these really good games. And it looks so good. I think there's like Rayman 2 graphics in there somewhere at some point. But the level design is all really polished, really visually pleasing. The theming is so strong. It is one of the most fun things I've done in the really old Doom engine, probably since Doom itself came out. If you like pirates and you like Doom, like, just shut up and play Pirate Doom right now. You need to. And even if you're like on the fence about either of those things, maybe you should play it anyway. Maybe it's just a really good mod. Because it also it doesn't take itself too seriously, and just I feel like I'm just gushing about Pirate Doom right now, and that's probably the best outcome because it's like a mod that's worth gushing about, I guess. So go play Pirate Doom. It shouldn't be too hard to find if you just type Pirate Doom into Google. Like, here, let's try it. Pirate Doom. Yep, first topic is Pirate Doom on the ZDoom forums, and the last update was July 5th, 2014, and it's also on ModDB now too, so go check it out. Go play Pirate Doom. It's good. It's fun. It is also funny. Next up in our 2014 list here is one of those joke categories I always come up with because I run out of, I don't really play very many games. Like, I play a lot of games every year, but I don't play very many games of that year, right? Like, I didn't play many games that were released in 2014 in 2014. So here's a joke category called Best Game That's Sort of Like Sonic the Hedgehog, but in a Good Way. And it should probably be more than a little obvious as to what game gets that award, and it is Freedom Planet. Freedom Planet 2 was just announced like a week ago, and I'm really excited for some of the team members on that game, but Freedom Planet is... Ow! Oh, I just smacked my desk. Oh, that hurts. I should probably push my keyboard in. Anyway, Freedom Planet. Freedom Planet is a good game. The pain kind of broke my train of thought. So I'll just read the script, maybe. You know, things have gotten weird when somebody you recognize from an old hangout releases what is essentially a Sonic fan game for money and is critically acclaimed for it. But to call Freedom Planet merely a Sonic fan game is being way, way too reductive for what this game actually plays like. More than just Sonic, Freedom Planet feels more like a lost Sega Saturn game. Like Shovel Knight, this game aims for an aesthetic and nails it with unwavering precision. Huge bosses, creative levels, fantastic music, and plenty to do. Freedom Planet is a wonderful game, as long as you switch to easy mode before you fight the impossibly difficult final boss. So yeah, that was the script I wrote for my Game of the Year video, and talking about that final boss, thinking back on it now, maybe I was a little bit of a wuss, because I feel like the final boss isn't really known for being that difficult now. I think Slow Beef from Something Awful played Freedom Planet sometime this year, and he didn't really complain about the final boss. And I watched, two best friends play Freedom Planet, and they didn't really have trouble with the final boss either. But boy, I sure did. It just, something about, Lord Brevin, I think is his name. When you get to him, he destroys me in like less than 60 seconds every single time. And that was just the first form. I think he has like 2 more forms after the form I was struggling against so much. So to beat Freedom Planet, I did end up having to bump it down to easy mode, where he becomes a little more manageable. But yeah, Freedom Planet is a very good game. It has elements of like Rocket Knight Adventures and Yoshi's Island, and a cat rides a motorcycle. I mean, what else do you need to know other than a cat rides a motorcycle? But hey, Steven, if you're listening to this, for Freedom Planet 2, could you make sure that like it's easier for Carol to actually get her motorcycle? Because I feel like I've never seen a gas tank in that game past the first level. And the motorcycle is one of the best parts of playing as Carol. Anyway, moving on to the next joke category, we have Best Game I Haven't Played, which for 2014 I gave to Middle-earth: Shadows of Mordor. And this paragraph is just a bunch of nonsense where I go on and on about the, what did they call it? It wasn't the Rivals system, was it? It was the, what was it? The Nemesis system, that's what it was. The Nemesis system seemed like the first big, like, advancement in video game artificial intelligence, I guess, where normally you have these big open worlds and you have just all this like stuff in them, but none of it is really, what am I trying to say? Like, it's always so scripted, right? The boss is always in the same place at the same time every time. Even if it's something like Grand Theft Auto, where you have some variance on how you tackle a mission objective, your target is always in the same place. It's just up to you to figure out how you want to tackle that target, you know. And he has this artificial intelligence routine that's almost kind of scripted, where he does the same thing every time, and it's up to you to figure out how to almost like break his scripting, right? But in Shadows of Mordor, they push like this idea of building your own narrative, and I feel like that's the big frontier that games should be pushing towards, right? Where you're not just playing through something that somebody else has set up for you, but you're actually kind of experiencing this world for yourself, and all you're really doing is like fighting through a set of rules, I guess. It's kind of like Minecraft in that way, right? Where Minecraft, it doesn't really have a structure. You just kind of play Minecraft however you feel like playing Minecraft. You know, do you want to build a castle? Do you want to go mining? Do you want to try and fight the Ender Dragon? Do you want to breed cats? Do you want to sail to the ends of the earth? You know, Minecraft, people will say, oh, it's a game where you make your own fun, and to that I say, yeah, it's a game where you make your own fun. And I feel like it's not just making your own fun, it's being able to tell stories about that world, right? where you tell your friends, oh man, the craziest thing just happened, and it's something that is completely unique to your playthrough. It's not something scripted in like this big action set piece sequence like you get in Call of Duty. It's something unique that you made for yourself. This unique moment in like your life, I guess. And I feel like what Shadows of Mordor was doing was trying to push more into that direction, where you have these bosses that roam around this overworld, and it's up to you to tackle them in whatever order you want, and they kind of wander around, so they're never in the same place twice. And they remember things about you, like if they killed you, or if you killed them, or if you ran away from them, or just whatever. They have memory of you, and they comment on this memory. And I really felt like that system, the Nemesis system from Shadows of Mordor, was really going to be the next big advancement in open world games. And now, a year later, we haven't seen anything in the same like orders of magnitude as Shadows of Mordor, I guess. It might end up being one of those weird systems that just kind of fades into the background, I guess. Like, think about Mario Kart clones, I guess, or like Smash Brothers clones, right? Sometimes there are games that are like concepts that are wholly owned by one company. Minecraft is probably a good example too, where, well, no, man, Minecraft's actually a bad example, but it's like Nintendo has Mario Kart, and Mario Kart is the king of that mountain, and then you don't really have very many clones of Mario Kart, and the ones that you do have aren't usually very good, like, I don't know, Pac-Man World Rally for the PlayStation 2. That was not a game that many people but me remember. And I worry that the Nemesis system for Shadows of Mordor is going to end up kind of like that, where nobody really gets why it's important, and those that try completely miss the mark, I guess. This all sounded better in my head, but it's not coming out of my mouth the right way. But yeah, best game I haven't played is probably Shadows of Mordor, and I still haven't played it. I would probably need a new PC before I could even try and play that. Well, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm going to be building a new PC here in probably the next couple weeks. And, I could play Shadows of Mordor. I could borrow it from my cousin. I might do that. But yeah, just to sum this all back up, basically, the Nemesis system is cool, and it felt like one of the first truly like next-gen ideas that only could be done on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And I hope more games learn lessons from that. Those kind of not really building bigger set pieces, but just building more complex worlds, I guess, and more complex ways to tell stories. But tell stories in like a dynamic way, is what I guess I'm trying to say. So yeah. That's that. And the runner-up for best game I haven't played was Wolfenstein: The New Order, which was just looked like a good shooter, I guess. I mean, I don't think there's anything really much more to say about that than it was just a good first-person shooter. My biggest annoyance? Boy, I am talking about these subjects a lot more than I thought I would. This is going to be a long podcast. My biggest annoyance my biggest annoyance for 2014 was the Virtual Console, and I think that's probably still the case. Nintendo's been doing a lot of good work on the Wii U and the 3DS, but the Virtual Console is still like the black sheep. They don't really treat it as well as they probably should, or at least as well as I want them to. Like, where do we even start? All the Virtual Console games released on the Wii still are not released on the Wii U. There's all these Neo Geo games, there's Castlevania, Dracula X, Rondo of Blood. There's just tons and tons of like Super Nintendo games and NES games and arcade games that are stranded on the original Wii that haven't been ported over to the Wii U, and there's no reason why. Like, it surely can't be that hard. My understanding about the Wii U is that architecturally, porting Wii games up to the Wii U isn't that difficult. So, Virtual Console stuff should carry over pretty easily. Especially when you figure it's just an emulator. I know how emulators work. You have the ROM file, and then you have the emulator itself. All you have to do is swap the data out. If the Wii U Virtual Console supports Super Nintendo games, then every single Super Nintendo game on the original Wii Virtual Console should automatically be on the Wii U, period. I know that there's like licensing issues that probably come up and everything else, but I don't think that's really an excuse for them treating it as poorly as they have. I mean, obviously Nintendo's probably wants to allocate resources somewhere else, and maybe I understand that, but it's still a real bummer that the Virtual Console is constantly left in the state it is. And especially when you consider, like, what they do to the graphics on some of these Virtual Console games, how washed out the colors look, and how dim the brightness and the gamma is. It's just, it is a mess. I would buy so many Virtual Console games if emulation on the PC wasn't always better in every single possible scenario. Right? Like, Kirby Superstar will say, in 2015 I finally finished the Virtual Console version of Kirby Superstar, and, you know, the colors were kind of dim and washed out, but like if I'd played that game on an emulator, I would have had save states and rewinds, and like even though I wouldn't use them, there would be filtering options, there'd be network play so I could play it over the internet, there would be all this stuff that the Virtual Console doesn't support, and Nintendo, with the way they handle the Virtual Console, will never update these games. There has only been like 2 instances in the last 9 years of Virtual Console releases where Nintendo has ever patched a Virtual Console game. And that is ridiculous. That is so annoying. I want to love the Virtual Console, Nintendo, but you give me so many reasons to not love it. And that sucks. For the worst hardware of 2014, I gave it to the Roxio GameCap HD Pro. Last year was the year where I finally bought and upgraded my video capture setup to something that supports HD, which is this Roxio thing. And that piece of garbage is nothing but a nightmare to use. You know, it's like really bad video codecs, their software is garbage, and even once you get footage recorded, it's recorded in this format that almost nothing else supports. I've tried Sony Vegas, people have complained that it doesn't work in Adobe Premiere, I don't think it works even in Windows Movie Maker. It's this completely broken video format, and I spent months and months of my life in 2014 trying to get around their crummy file format. It takes so long for me to produce a video nowadays, because first I have to record it, and then I have to convert it, and then all this other, I spent so much time in 2014 just trying to figure out a way to use their crummy file format, because I can't just record it. When I record it, sometimes the device drops the signal in the middle of the recording, and the quality is crap. It takes I can't just use the file itself. I have to convert it to a different format, and then I think I have to convert it again to something else, and it is such a headache. And one of the first things I think I'm going to do once I get my new PC built is to buy something better. I think I'm going to try and save up $200 and get a good Elgato, because the Roxio Game Cap HD is just even using it, even if nothing else goes wrong, it's still 75% of the time will just blue screen my computer. It is so bad. Do not ever buy anything from Roxio, ever. Their tech support is so worthless. When I contacted their tech support about the Roxio Game Cap, I was describing problems to them that they said they had no idea ever happened, but I see people complain about this stuff on the internet all the time. And if you go into their tech support forums, the Roxio tech support forums are dominated by idiots who are giving misinformation out to people. And they are revered for doing this. They are considered elite members, elite users who know what they're talking about, and they don't. They just bully people down who disagree with them. It is the worst experience with any piece of hardware I've ever had. The Roxio Game Cap HD, there's not even words for how bad it is. I'm so angry. So angry about video capture. So now we're finally down to the 2014 Game of the Year nominees, which I named as Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which I played in 2014. That's a fantastic game. One of Platinum's best. Probably the best story in a Metal Gear game ever. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it kind of does. I guess that's kind of why, that's kind of the Metal Gear thing, but it's also got Platinum's kind of super wacky, over-the-top aesthetic that is just, it's incredible. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is amazing. There was also Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which was probably... I didn't really like Donkey Kong Country Returns. I think I said this in my video review. But Tropical Freeze is a really good game. It's probably one of the best 2D platformers on the Wii U. Trying to think if there's anything better, like a 2D platformer that's better. You could say Shovel Knight and Freedom Planet, but those are also on the PC now, so maybe those don't really count because they're non-exclusive. I don't know, but Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, just a really good game. Really good music. It plays really well. It was one of the best 2D platformers of 2014 at the very least. And then there was Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 it's really good. The big debate for me was between Mario Kart 8 and Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed as the best kart racer of all time. Sonic and All-Stars it has more content, it has more modes, it has a better single-player campaign, but Mario Kart 8 is more polished. Its visuals are nicer, the frame rate is incredible, it just feels really good, it is super balanced. Mario Kart Wii was awful about item balance. It was so easy to get blown up in that game. And Mario Kart 8 is so finely tuned. It is beautiful. It is the best Mario Kart game, if not the best kart racer of all time. And then, of course, Bayonetta 2 came out last year. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is really good, but Bayonetta 2 might be better. Bayonetta 2 takes a character that was primarily so much about weird sex appeal and this kind of Dante from Devil May Cry character and turns her into kind of something else. It's still this character action game like Devil May Cry, but Bayonetta as a person is so different in that game. They play her up as more of a playful character. It's a very colorful, fun game in a way that the original Bayonetta wasn't. And it's really incredible. It feels like it graduates from being like a Devil May Cry clone into being more of its own thing, I guess. And of course, Smash Brothers came out last year. I didn't like Donkey Kong Country Returns, I didn't like Mario Kart Wii, and I really did not like Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Donkey Kong Country Returns, or Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, rather, amazing game. Mario Kart 8, amazing game. Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U is an amazing game. It's hard to say whether or not I like it more than Melee. Probably. I probably do. I've played more of it than Melee at this point. It is the Smash Brothers game. If you're going to play a Smash Brothers game, you should probably play the Wii U one, especially now with all the DLC that we know about Cloud Strife and Ryu. Ryu. It's still in my head. I still say Ryu. And sometimes it comes out of my mouth because it's not a character name that I say very often. But yeah, Cloud Strife, Ryu, Bayonetta, Lucas, Mewtwo, all those guys. The DLC for that game was pretty good. And the amiibo. You can't talk about Smash Brothers without talking about amiibo, and I have two amiibo. I have Bowser and I have Ness. And they are pretty cool. Maybe the amiibo integration for Smash Brothers wasn't the greatest, but it was still pretty good. But yeah, those are the runner-ups. Metal Gear Rising, Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, Bayonetta 2, and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Those were the runners-up, or the nominees, rather, I should say, for 2015. Oh, I'm making a mess of this. They were the nominees for 2014. Metal Gear Rising, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, Bayonetta 2, and Super Smash Bros. So who wins? It's Bayonetta 2! Bayonetta 2 was my game of the year for 2014. Somebody once tried to tell me that Bayonetta 2 was worse than the original Bayonetta because the bosses weren't big enough. And that is such a ridiculous statement to make. Because on every other level, Bayonetta 2 is a better game than Bayonetta 1. The levels have more to do in them, the graphics are more colorful, the combat system is expanded, there's new weapons, there's new combos, there's... The visuals, the art direction in this game is incredible. You eventually reach... I think they call it the underworld, but it's basically hell. It is actually hell. There's all this fire around, and that area, hell has never looked so beautiful, I guess. You think about games like Dante's Inferno and how gross that game was, and then you look at Bayonetta 2's interpretation of hell, and it's all these hot pinks, and it's blacks, and it's all these armored tentacles, and this jungle environment and these giant tornadoes, and it is such a beautiful game. I was looking for art direction or something, but it's a good looking game, and it plays as good as it looks. It probably plays better than it looks, because I'm sure there's some people out there who are like, oh it's only 720p. And anti-aliasing, where's that? Those guys, missing the point. But yeah, Bayonetta 2, Game of the Year 2014. That's just it. It's a good game. It is better than Bayonetta 1. It is. Just play it. That's just play Bayonetta 2, all day, every day, forever. Which finally, of course, brings us, at last, to this year, to 2015. Or I guess maybe by the time I upload this, it'll probably be 2016. Ha! I snapped my fingers there. I don't know if the microphone picked up on it. Like I was saying, 40 minutes ago, an hour ago. I don't know how much I'm going to edit this down. But like I said at the start of the podcast, I've been so busy in 2015 that I haven't actually been playing that many games. I've started a handful of games, we'll say. I started Earthbound Zero 25th Anniversary, which is a ROM hack for Earthbound Zero on the NES. It supposedly makes the game a little bit easier. It revamps some of the visuals to make it a little bit nicer. But Earthbound Zero is still not a very good RPG, even with these enhancements. There are some really tedious, bad parts about that game, and I got like 10 hours into it, and I just lost interest. I didn't even lose interest. I think I actually got legitimately angry at some of the puzzles in that game, where you absolutely need a walkthrough to beat that game. So I gave up on it and switched over to Final Fantasy V, which I'm actually still playing slowly but surely. I'm like 15 hours into Final Fantasy V now. And that's an alright game. It's not the best, but I think I'm still like maybe halfway through, not even. I just finished Battle on the Big Bridge, which is like that game's big pivotal moment. But in 2015, I only finished like 5 games compared to last year, where I finished like 4 times as many games. This year I only finished, like, if we look at my backloggery account, I finished Kirby Superstar, Super Mario RPG, Super Metroid, Konami Crazy Racers, and the single-player campaign for Splatoon. That's it. Those are all the games I finished in 2015, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of those are games I've already finished in the past. I was just replaying them for funsies. And instead of having wacky categories for 2015, I just wrote out the 1, 2, 3 games that I was most interested in 2015. And at the top of that list is Super Mario Maker. As an indie developer, what Nintendo did here is kind of incredible. If you make games, I don't know if this is true for everyone else, but for me at least, when you make games and you kind of pursue other interests like making videos or whatever else, every now and then you get this itch. You say, I want to make a level. I don't want to make a game. I want to make a level for something. And even just making one level for something is usually incredibly complex. You still need to figure out like code stuff. You have to code enemies. You have to find or make your own graphics. There's all this mess involved with something as simple as making a level. And what Nintendo did here with Super Mario Maker, it's never been easier to make a level before. You can crank out a level in Super Mario Maker in a couple hours. Whereas previously, if I wanted to make a level for something, we're talking a commitment that would be like 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, just for one level. And here, I can boot up Super Mario Maker, I can make a level, I can release it, and all it took was a weekend. Like, not even a weekend. Like, a weekend is if I really agonize on a concept, right? If I just want to crank something out really quick, I can just do that in 2 hours. Like, in the time it takes me to, I was going to say eat dinner, but I don't think anyone takes 2 hours to eat dinner. But you know what I mean, right? It is so incredibly simple. And for that is so, like, cool. People will complain about how much crap there is in Super Mario Maker. All these really bad levels, and that is definitely true. But that's because it's so easy. You don't have to dedicate yourself to learning these tools to be able to make a really cool Super Mario Maker level. And that is a very powerful and very important thing. And I can't even say, like, that is like the ultimate praise for me, right? It's just, it's so good. And then you get guys like Patrick Klepek streaming all his Dan Reichert challenge stuff, and it's just, it is so good. so much about this is so good. I'm gushing so much I can't even get words out because I love Super Mario Maker so much. Oh, whew. Yeah, it's a good... I hesitate to say that it's a game, but it is a good whatever it is. A good tool, a good database. But it's good. It's really good. Second on this list is Splatoon. I did not think I was going to like Splatoon as much as I did, but when I was in the global test fire beta thing, I ended up like just really thinking about Splatoon a lot after that ended, and there came a point like 2 months ago where I was just listening to a Splatoon song on YouTube, and I thought, man, I should have bought Splatoon or something because it was a good game. And then someone bought it for me, and it's a good game. Like, playing multiplayer shooters on the PC, you kind of learn the rhythm of that, right? It's like the Counter-Strike argument. You have all these angry people screaming in your headset all the time about how either you're not good enough at the game or you're too good at the game. You're always playing on the same map over and over, right? You're always playing on DE Dust or maybe Dust 2, and you never leave that map, ever. It's just dust, 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 24/7, all day, every day, forever, and you get sick of dust. And all these shooters are always so serious, right? Counter-Strike is about terrorism. Battlefield is about war. Even Team Fortress 2 is a really bloody game when you think about it. Left 4 Dead, Quake Arena, Unreal Tournament. These are all so like hyper-violent games. And Splatoon fixes all of this. All of it. It is such a smart game. It is incredible how smart it is. Like, where to start? Okay, no voice chat. I know this was like a big, like, oh, how could Nintendo do this sort of thing. And actually, I think not having voice chat in Splatoon makes it a lot better. Because they do give you commands to, like, rally your team around a certain point or to taunt your enemies after you splat them, which is after you kill them. And that's kind of all you really need, right? You need a way to call for help if you need help, and you need a way to go, ha ha, I got you, and that's it. And Splatoon lets you do that. And it cuts out all of the other noise cuts out all of the 14-year-olds screaming in your ear about what a homosexual you are and all this other stuff. And it is just simple and pure in a way that, like, normally I don't play multiplayer shooters with random pub games, like pub meaning like public games. I play Splatoon almost exclusively in pub games. I don't think any of my friends have Splatoon, and if they do, they haven't really spoke up about wanting to play with me, but playing pub games in Splatoon is actually kind of awesome. Like, it feels so weird to say that after what a nightmare pub games are in TF2 and Counter-Strike and Left 4 Dead and all these other games. Those are games where I almost exclusively just want to play with friends and nobody else. But with Splatoon, like, let's say you do a match where you have some idiot on your team who's not pulling his weight. Well, a round of Splatoon is about 5 minutes, maybe 10. So you're not gonna, like, the round is over quickly, and once the round ends, the teams shuffle and you actually lose some players, and you're constantly having this cycle in of new players while old players get cycled out. So if you have this idiot on your team who's not really carrying his weight, well, in about 5 minutes, he's probably not going to be your problem anymore. Similarly, if you're fighting against a team that is, like, totally kicking your butt, in about 5 minutes, those guys might end up on your team. And then, like, with the maps problem, like I was saying in Counter-Strike, where you're like, you get stuck on servers where it's like DE dust 24/7. In Splatoon, that doesn't happen because there's only maybe like 4 to 6 maps available at any given time. Splatoon has this big pool of like, I want to say like 15 or 20 maps, but every day they cycle in like 2 new maps. Like the 2 maps for one day will get thrown out and then 2 new maps will replace them. And this happens every 24 hours forever. So you never get trapped into this situation where it's like you're trapped on... Oh gosh, what is the Splatoon map name? I knew one earlier. I had one in mind that I was going to say. Like the skate park. Like you're never going to hit a situation where you play Splatoon and every day it's the skate park map. I'm looking up what the name of the skate park map is. Black Belly Skate Park. So you'll never hit a scenario where every single day you play Splatoon, it's always going to be Black Belly Skate Park. That's never going to happen. Because if you play a lot of Black Belly Skate Park one day, the next day it might turn into like something else. Like the summer camp level, or the mall map, or the art gallery map, or the skyscraper map, or anything else. And that's another great thing about Splatoon is like you have Team Fortress 2, right? And Team Fortress 2 has like 70 maps. And I feel like 65 of those maps look nearly identical. Every single map in Splatoon is unique. Every single one. None of them look the same. And like now with the maps they're getting into, they have like unique level elements. Like in a map they added like last month, the water level changes after a certain point. So you have like the concept of playing Splatoon is that you squirt your paintball gun to cover the map to make like to have the most of your paint on the level at any given time. And in this water park map, the water level will lower at a certain point, and it reveals all this new ground that you can then cover with your paint, and it completely changes the dynamic of the level, because all of a sudden you were losing by 60% or whatever, and now all of a sudden you have all this room to just spread your ink everywhere, right? And it really gets down to the point where a good Splatoon match is really won, like, you can change the tide in about 30 seconds. So you have these really short rounds and you can turn the tide really quickly, and it is really fun. And like the dress up stuff is actually really cool too. It's not just like Team Fortress 2 where you just have hats. You get shoes and you get shirts and you get hats, and there's all these different guns, and it is probably one of the most smart shooters ever. It's really incredible about, like, when you think about it, about Nintendo's first foray into a competitive shooter, and just how precisely they seem to understand exactly the problems with the genre and exactly how to fix them. And that is kind of incredible. So yeah, Splatoon, great game. I love it. Thank you, Logan, for buying me Splatoon, because it is very good. And it also has a whole like single player campaign, and that's all right. It's completely separate from the multiplayer, but it's one of those single players where it's kind of a tutorial to teach you how to play the game, but it's also not. But it's, the campaign's still pretty good if you don't feel like playing online. But I don't see why you wouldn't want to play online. I hate playing PC shooters online by myself, and I've put more time into Splatoon by myself online than I think any other shooter I've ever played in my life. It is... Yeah, Nintendo's been doing some good work on the Wii U, and I feel like Splatoon is up there with probably one of the best games they've ever made. Or at least for the Wii U, we'll say. We'll quantify it like that. Next up, I just have a blank slot that I wrote down, Rodea the Sky Soldier. And it's probably telling that the slot is blank because I don't think I really have much else to say about Rodea the Sky Soldier besides, what I said in my review and in the comparison video. It's a good game. I still think it's a good game. I like it. It was fun to play. I think if you have a Wii, the Wii version is probably worth buying. But unfortunately, it's probably going to end up being this ultra rare collector's item. I got up all the way to the final boss, and the final boss of that game is kind of rotten. I mean, not to spoil anything about my review, because normally I try and beat these games before I try and write my review for them, but I didn't actually beat Rodea the Sky Soldier yet. And it's largely because that final boss is he's mean. It is an extremely long final boss. It takes 15 minutes to beat him, and you get no checkpoints. And the final phase of Rodea the Sky Soldier's final boss is I don't want to say it's impossible, but after 12 minutes of enduring everything else that boss throws at you, and then to die and be reset 12 minutes it's real rough. But yeah, it's a good game. Play Rodea the Sky Soldier if you get a chance. The next thing I wrote down was Sonic Runners. I've played an unhealthy amount of Sonic Runners in 2015. But lately, in the last couple months, I guess I've been slowly tapering off. Because every time Sega makes an update to Sonic Runners, it just makes the game worse and worse and worse. Either the new patch will break, it'll make the frame rate garbage, the game keeps crashing more and more and more the more they keep updating it, or they'll add even more advertisements, or more recently Sonic Runners 2.0 came out, and it completely rebalances the game top to bottom, nerfs everything, and it really feels like what Sega is trying to do is trying to push you towards spending money instead of just enjoying what was at one point a pretty fun game that you didn't really have to pay for. Now it feels like Sega's kind of rubbing their fingers together huh? Maybe you want to give us $1 or $2 or 20 or 1,000 just in Sonic Runners? I'm like, no, that's fine. I don't think I want to give you guys money for this, especially not if you're going to keep updating the game to make this more and more egregious, where you're pushing me harder and harder and harder to pay you money for this stuff. Because it's not like me paying you money is going to make the game better. It's just going to make you richer, and that's not my problem. And I feel like what I wrote below this was free-to-play games in general, and I feel like I've had a lot of friends that, with as much as I've played Sonic Runners, who just kind of I don't want to say they silently shake their heads at me on Twitter, because you kind of can't do that. You have to physically tell a person that, hey, you're an idiot for doing this, but I get a lot of guff for playing free-to-play games. 2015 was the year that I got my first tablet, right? So all the horrors of the Android App Store are all brand new experiences for me, right? And there's so much garbage on the App Store. I can't even. It's so bad. And the worst is how, I guess the word I'm looking for might be incestuous. Whenever I'm playing Pac-Man 256 or Sonic Runners, and those games show you video advertisements so you can get a free credit or whatever else, it's always an ad for the same types of games. So you have this whole industry of developers that are like saying, hey, stop playing their match 3 game and come over and play our match 3 game because we paid for Arnold Schwarzenegger and Mariah Carey. That makes our game better, right? And no. In fact, the fact that, like, they get Mariah Carey and Arnold Schwarzenegger makes it like 10 times as gross, because that means that they are making so much money from these games that they can afford these giant stars, or I guess they're probably kind of washed up at this point. Mariah Carey is doing Hallmark Channel Christmas movies at this point, so it's not like she's what she used to be, but it's still gross. And how gross those games are feels like it kind of undermines when you do find a free-to-play game that is actually fun. Or like you run into like a scenario with like Sonic Runners where it was actually really fun when I started playing Sonic Runners back in May, and then the North American update came out, which added advertisements and destroyed the frame rate, and then like 2 updates later they did all like this new leaderboard stuff, and that just makes the game crash now. Like every time I play Sonic Runners, it probably crashes at least twice, and these are like short sessions, right? So the fact that like in a half an hour of play Sonic Runners crashes twice, that should be unacceptable, and for some reason Sega just keeps making it worse. Man, that whole thing is a bummer when I think about it, and I don't want it to be a bummer. Anyway, that actually concludes all the games I wanted to talk about. But what I ended up doing is I solicited my patrons on Patreon to, if they had, games they felt it would be interesting for me to talk about. And I got like more than a few recommendations from my patrons. So let's, I guess, go over those really quick. And I say really quick, like anything I do is really quick. But whatever. I'm obviously not going to talk about every single suggestion they gave me, but, just the ones that like jump out at me. Like I see a game name and I think, oh, I have an opinion about that. I will talk about that. Like Setsune Weifel mentions Final Fantasy Record Keeper, another free-to-play mobile game. I feel like with Final Fantasy Record Keeper, Square Enix was trying to make up for the other free-to-play Final Fantasy game they made, called Final Fantasy All the Bravest, which was like, I never played All the Bravest, and I don't have any plans to play All the Bravest, but it really sounded and looked like just complete garbage. I think you had to pay for individual characters, and the stamina meter was all like crazy strict, and there was almost no gameplay to it. Record Keeper is a bit more involved than that. It's basically just like a Final Fantasy battle arena where you go through famous Final Fantasy battles throughout history, and it's all stylized like Final Fantasy VI, and that's actually pretty cool, I guess. I hesitate to say that it's a fun game, because I've always felt that very few people play RPGs for the battle system, especially Final Fantasy. To me, Final Fantasy is a game where you just hold down the A button to cycle through the same menu options over and over and over until you win the fight. And that's basically what I do in Record Keeper, except in Record Keeper, there's just a straight-up touchscreen button that says Auto Fight. So you push that and you watch the battles play themselves. And, like, that's not fun, but it ends up this weird thing where it's something I can do while I do other things, and I can still feel like I accomplished something. And I feel like that's like this weird concept that's up and coming lately. This weird subgenre of entertainment for things you can do while you're multitasking. But it's like all these games and videos and things that on their own, they'd be really boring if you were expected to pay sole attention to them. But because you can layer them on top of each other, suddenly your mind is just occupied enough, right? It's engaging enough that it feels fun, but it's not like too engaging so that you feel overwhelmed. It's just like, it's hard to explain, but it's just layered levels of boring things that when they all combine into this multitasking blob, it feels fun, I guess, but not fun. Not fun in the traditional sense. Not like, oh, a thing is happening and I'm part of it. It's just like I'm part of like 7 different things. And I'm just talking in circles, but you get what I'm probably trying to say, right? Like, if this is becoming a thing with people, then obviously I'm probably describing something that people can relate to, because I can't think of any better way to explain it, really. It's just layered levels of low-level entertainment that combine to form something greater than the sum of their parts. And that's part of, like, this cycle of what Final Fantasy Record Keeper is. It is a game where I'll set my tablet down here on the computer desk, and while I'm watching a video, every now and then I look down at the tablet and I tap a couple buttons, and then I look away and I go back to whatever I was doing otherwise. And I guess that works? It's one of those things where my brain tells me that it likes this feeling, but if I stop and think about it, I don't know how comfortable it makes me feel, because I'm not really doing anything, but I am. Maybe it's probably what they call like a Skinner box, right? But I don't know, are Skinner boxes really bad? They might be, but I'm probably not going to stop playing Record Keeper, or Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, or... Well, no, actually, I have kind of stopped playing Dokkan Battle. I got kind of bored that the battle system in Dokkan Battle it's kind of confusing. It's this weird puzzle game. It doesn't really make any sense to me. Most of the other suggestions are like for games that I didn't really think too deeply about. Like, I think Setsune mentioned Downwell. I think that's an Adult Swim game. I don't actually know. Oh, it's Devolver Digital. Okay. Yeah. Well, still, I haven't even seen any gameplay footage of Downwell. I don't know what that game plays like. I barely even know what it looks like. I know it's black and white with, I think, like shades of red. It might be like hyper gory or something. I don't know. I haven't played Downwell. I guess it's probably pretty cool. I saw a lot of my friends talking about it. But that is the extent of my knowledge on Downwell. More than one of my patrons suggested I talk about Shadow Complex Remastered, and I don't know, what else is there really to say about Shadow Complex Remastered? I bought Shadow Complex, the original one, for the Xbox 360 when it was new, and I never actually finished it. I remember getting stuck. I don't remember if it was this part, but I remember there was these laser walls that you had to, like, time going through them. And I remember that being really frustrating. That might be where I stopped. And I stopped somewhere in Shadow Complex and just never felt like going back. It just, I don't know, something about the story didn't really grab me. The environment didn't really grab me. The enemies didn't really grab me. Like, what's that game? It's like Nathan Drake versus Techno Future Zombies? And you have to save your girlfriend? Like, Like, and it makes me feel like I'm being one of those jerks when, like, oh, it was never that good. But maybe it's just because there weren't very many games back then that were like Shadow Complex. Now in 2015, it feels like we're kind of overwhelmed by Metroidvania games. I think I counted a couple of weeks ago, one of my friends brought up Axiom Verge, another game I haven't played, but he brought up Axiom Verge and how nobody was talking about it. And it's because if you look on Steam, I think in the last 2 years, we've gotten like 20 or 30 Metroidvania games. There's Axiom Verge, there's Dust and Elysian Tale. Now all I can think about is games that are coming out soon. Like Ghost Song is coming out soon. Heartforth Alicia is coming out soon. Let's see if I can find my list real quick. Autolus, Ori and the Blind Forest, Teslagrad, Shantae, The Pirate's Curse, Dust and Elysian Tale, The Swapper, Strider, Environment Station Alpha, Unepic, SteamWorld Dig, Zeodrifter. Yeah, I think those are all games that just came out this year. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 just this year alone. And then next year we have Ghost Song, Heartforth Alicia, Slain, Chasm, Time Spinner. You know, we're getting Metroidvania games at this incredible pace. And, like, who cares about Shadow Complex anymore? Is it really that unique to be like, hey, look at us. We made Super Metroid again, but now you're Nathan Drake instead of Samus Aran. Because Nathan Drake is this great, unique character to hold up above our heads and say, wow, it's Indiana Jones. That's not to say that I don't like Uncharted. I've never played Uncharted, so maybe I'm just completely out of my depth here, but you know, it's just, I'm being a shyster. But yeah, Shadow Complex, I don't know. I struggle to care about it these days. None the least because it's also like Shadow Complex Remastered on the PC at least is like a secret Trojan horse for Epic's digital marketplace. You know, it's like their Steam competitor. They want, you can get Unreal Tournament 4 and you can get Shadow Complex Remastered. And like, I'm getting so tired of managing all these different logins, right? You have Origin, Uplay, Steam, Xbox Live, Good Old Games, Battle.net, whatever weird account system that WB is running for Mortal Kombat and Batman, and Square Enix's thing, and it's just, I am so tired of having all these different login systems and separate friends lists, and it is just a nightmare. And like, it's not even limited to gaming, right? You see it in like television too, right? You could pay $60 to $100 a month for DirecTV for your cable service, or you could subscribe to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and Crunchyroll. And I'm sure that subscribing to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and Crunchyroll would be cheaper, but you also have 4 separate logins for that. 4 separate accounts. 4 separate companies drawing money out of your bank account. And that, it's just, after a certain point, between forum logins, and Twitter, and Tumblr, and everything else, I feel like I have at least 100 websites where I have some password and some account stored on them, and I don't even remember all of them at this point. Like, sometimes, I'm sure you've run into that situation, right, where you register for a website and it goes, oh, that username is already taken because you registered there 3 years ago and forgot about it, right? Because you have so many accounts that you can't keep track of them all. And it's starting to drive me nuts. I hate it. Never mind, like we're just talking about usernames and passwords, right? But then think about all the clients you have to have installed on your computer now. I have to have Uplay installed. I have to have Origin installed. I have to have Steam installed. I'm going to have this stupid Epic Games digital marketplace installed. I need Battle.net installed. It is ridiculous. I hate it. I hate it so much. I cannot convey the level of hate for this. And now we have, it's exhausting. I know this was supposed to be about Shadow Complex Remastered, But looking through the rest of the suggestions, I don't really have any other thoughts about what was mentioned. Matt suggests I talk about The Witcher 3, which I haven't really thought too much about. I own The Witcher 2 on Good Old Games, and I've thought about installing it a few times, but didn't because it's like 12 gigabytes, and I didn't have fast enough internet to really deal with that until about a month and a half ago. And because I haven't played The Witcher 2, I feel like I shouldn't really pay attention to The Witcher 3, because I need to get one out of the way before the other, and I know I probably don't need to do that, but I also don't have a computer that can run The Witcher 3 right now, so that'll be something I'll think about once I get my new computer built. He also brought up Fear 2, which I played for about an hour and a half, like a month ago, and haven't played since, so I don't really feel like I should talk about that either, except for the fact that Fear 2 is like a way more over-the-top version of Fear 1, and I kind of like that. Like, Fear 1 it took a while to really, like, get under your skin, and that was pretty cool, but Fear 2 kind of just, it hits the ground running and doesn't stop. And that's kind of cool, too. Anders suggests Metal Gear Solid 5, which I do think looks super interesting, but because I think it looks super interesting, I've deliberately tried not to pay attention to it, because I don't want to be spoiled for any of the gameplay stuff, or any of the storyline stuff, or anything like that. So I don't really know what to say about Metal Gear Solid 5. Maybe some of the things I said about Shadows of Mordor earlier probably apply to at least some of Metal Gear Solid, about how open maps are and how much freedom you have to tackle them in any kind of way you want. Like, I've seen that really cool video clip of fighting a certain character and how you can call in, like, one of the things about Metal Gear Solid 5 is that not only can you Fulton guys out of the battlefield, which means that you knock them out, you tie them to a balloon, and they get sent off to your home base for brainwashing, and they end up working for you as, like, you're their boss. But you can also just, like, call in airstrikes, I guess. Not really airstrikes, but, like, airdrops. Like, you can say, send supplies over here, and a jet will fly overhead, and it will drop a parachute, and this box of supplies will drift down in the location you told it to go to. And the video I saw was the player fighting a certain specific character that's running around the battlefield, and they call in an airdrop, and this parachute full of supplies floats down, knocks him square in the head, and knocks him out. And that's pretty cool. That sounds like something I would want to try out. I own Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, and that's probably one of the first things I'll play when I get my new computer built. But until then, that's probably the most I can say about either of the two games. Hotline Miami 2 he brought up, which I haven't really thought about, like, at all, even a little bit, because what little I did hear, it didn't sound as good as Hotline Miami 1, and I still haven't ever played Hotline Miami 1, so there's still that, I guess. He also mentions the Magic Circle, which I only know from the Giant Bomb Quick Look, and it looked really cool in the Quick Look, but that's it. That's all I can really say about it, is go watch the Quick Look. It's this game where you play as, like, a video game character trapped inside of a video game while people are modifying the code around you, and you have to, like, exploit glitches to get around, and parts of the game aren't finished, and I think you end up, like, crossing over into other, like, genres and stuff. It looked really cool, but I haven't played it yet. It's on my Steam wish list. I'll get around to it eventually, but not right now. So I guess that leaves us with the Game of the Year for 2015, because I don't really have anything else to talk about right now, I suppose. If you didn't guess from how much I gushed about it earlier, My game of the year for 2015 is Super Mario Maker. That is a game to me with infinite potential. You could play Super Mario Maker every day until the database for that goes down, until the servers stop working, and you would probably see a new level every single day. You'd probably see 10 new levels every single day. And that is exciting. They might not all be good levels, but they don't have to be good levels. It's just such a creative, such a beautifully designed piece of software. And as a creative type person, it kind of doesn't get any better than that, right? It lets me indulge in my creativity faster and easier and better than basically everything else out on the market. The only real improvements I can think for Super Mario Maker, well, I could think of a lot of improvements, really. There needs to be like user-generated playlists and all this other stuff, but what I really want now is a way to draw my own graphics, right? But even then, that might make it too complex. That might break the whole thing. That might turn it into Game Maker. And Game Maker already exists, and that's when things get too complex. It's when it stops being the sort of thing where you can throw together a level in 2 hours, and it turns into something where you have to throw together a level in 2 weeks or whatever. And Mario Maker's best feature, best benefit, is its simplicity, obviously. And sometimes that's a little too simplistic, but sometimes, most of the time, it is right on the money. It is perfect. It is exactly what it should be. And that's pretty cool. And I guess that's the end of my 2015 Game of the Year podcast. I've kind of run out of notes here to really talk about anything else. So I guess I should probably wrap it up at this point. I want to give a big thanks to all my Patreon supporters. To Anders, Logan, both Ryans, Marcham and Langley, Thomas Gale, Nolan, Keith, Setsune, Tom B, Rose, Christopher, and Matt. Without them, 2015 would have sucked a lot more than it did. I feel like a lot of people have complained this year about how terrible 2015 was for them. And thinking back on it for me, I don't think it was really that bad. It was mostly just busy, right? I had so many different things that were tearing me away from my life. Just mixing things up, making like just chaos in my life. But it wasn't really that bad. I feel like I probably grew a lot. I probably did a lot of things that I should have been doing for a long time. And it's a good feeling. I feel like I'm exiting 2015 feeling good about a lot of different things and a lot better about myself personally. It's and part of that is because just, I have people who want to support me. I've learned things about myself. I know that I'm probably smarter and better than I give myself credit for. That's like a weird thing to say. Even now, I think, should I have said that? And, yeah, maybe I should have. Maybe we should all be a little more confident in ourselves. But yeah, 2015, not the worst year. Not the worst year. Not for me. If you would like to be one of my Patreon supporters, speaking of Patreon, just head on over to patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Patreon supporters get all kinds of fun goodies, like monthly newsletters, and you get to play all my indie games for free. Even like it's mainly the ones I'm going to charge money for. You can get work in progress builds of like 4 or 5 different games right now if you like just throw $2 into my account. There's also like things you can get if you only pay $1. It's really not very much. You should really think about it because it's cool and it makes me feel cool and then it makes you feel cool. And everyone deserves to feel cool. If you want to keep up with where I'm at on the internet, there's my Tumblr, which is blazehedgehog.tumblr.com. I write for tssznews.com professionally, and then I keep a different gaming website, my own personal gaming website where all my writing lives, bltn.net. YouTube's out there. It should be pretty easy to find. youtube.com/blazehedgehog. I hesitate to say just search Blaze Hedgehog on Google, because that used to be kind of a common name and it would turn up people who weren't me. But I just punched Blaze Hedgehog into Google and it shows most of my stuff. So do that, I guess, if you want to figure out where I am on the internet or whatever. Yeah, that's it. So yeah. Happy holidays, everyone, and a happy new year. Bring on 2016, I guess. That's gonna be a year, right? Oh yeah, and sorry for not playing Undertale yet.